All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. Shawn, how are we doing today, sir?
We are doing awesome. It's supposed to be a nice and sunny 1 degree tomorrow, so I got my 3/4 zip all ready to go.
There you go.
And I'm complaining to a guy who's about 6 hours up north, so you're probably gonna have it a lot worse than me.
Yeah, no, not right now though. I'm in beautiful Gulf Shores, Alabama for the month of February.
Ooh.
So
wow.
So yeah, it's a
we'll
ball.
talk about that.
Yeah,
a little trip for a whole month. I think we're gonna have to get into that. But ladies and gentlemen, we've got a really good show for you today, and I'm excited for you to meet our next guest if you haven't already. I'm going to start by just talking about this next guest here. I talked a lot on this podcast already about my great experience at the IAOA conference in Nashville, and that was my first industry conference, and it was my first industry conference as an agency owner. And the guest that we have on the podcast today, he was just one of those guys that when you first meet him is a genuine guy. Ask the right questions where you can just tell that he truly cares and wants to help and be one of those guys that be someone you need to call when you're on that Scratch Agency journey. So I greatly appreciate that and look forward to having him on today. But we are welcoming Brad Boldt, who is the president of Ameriguard Insurance Agency from St. Paul, Minnesota. Brad, how are you doing today? And thank you again for taking the time to join us here on the Scratch Agency podcast.
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate those kind words. Been listening to you guys' show. I think you're doing an awesome job, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thanks, Brad.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time again. Go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I wanted to dive more into Alabama. What are you doing down there?
Getting out of the cold and snow.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah, my wife and I started maybe we're basically empty nesters now, so there's nothing holding us back to the winter in Minnesota. So we both like to be in shorts and like to golf, so we're trying to find somewhere where we can snowbird.
Gotcha.
Good for you.
You're going to be buying that second house soon, huh?
I hope so. Wait for things to come down a little bit.
Nice. Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about your makeup at your agency, what your split is, personal versus commercial, kind of how you got started, and then we'll kind of just swing it from there.
Yeah, I'll just walk back to how I got into the business. I originally started as a farmer's insurance agent, was a farmer's agent for just shy of 9 years.
Okay.
And was on the path to growing. And then, as anybody that's had experience with captive, you are completely tied to what they do as a company. So they took massive rate increases and really kind of adjusted the path that they wanted to go as a company, and it affected not only my income but my morality. I mean, most of the agency force at that point was miserable, and I thought, I'm too young to be miserable in this business. I love this business, and there's got to be a better way. So I started searching for a way to go independent. I tried to create my own independent agency, and at the time I didn't know anything about aggregators or networks. I probably would have went that route if I had, and didn't have much success getting direct appointments. So I tried to find a agency to join, which I did, and I found Ameriguard Insurance Agency, which was very close, and I did have some other connections that were there at the time. So I joined Ameriguard at the end of 2006, and then ended up purchasing the company in 2011. And so that was my, little did I know, it was my first acquisition at the time. So that was a great experience. So I've been the agency owner since April 1st of 2011. And, we've grown. It's been just a roller coaster of a ride ever since. We've almost tripled in size since I took over at that time, and that is from adding on a couple really good producers and just really kind of expanding what we've done as a to grow our business. So yeah, it's been I wouldn't change any. Well, no, that's not true. I would change a lot because I've learned a whole lot I wish I knew then what I knew now or know now. But yeah, it's been a great ride.
Brad, do you mind if I dig a little bit deeper? Like, how
Yeah.
did you find that agency that you initially joined before you purchased them?
Well, I initially found them because there was a farmer's agent that I knew when I was an agent there that was working there.
Gotcha.
So I interviewed quite a few different ones. This particular agency just had the best split that was available. So that was something that was attractive. It was, and I seemed to have seemed that I was going to have a lot more control over my book of business, as well as attain some ownership of my book.
Yeah, I was going to say 5. I mean, what was it? 5 years, and then you purchased it. I mean, that's not that long of a time, you know.
No, it was pretty short amount of time. I thought that I was prepared to be an agency owner, and I soon found out that I really wasn't. So, like we all do as we grow, you kind of learn on the job and take your lumps and
Sounds like the day I'm having today. I didn't know you've been with me the whole day, Brad. Let's dive into that though. If we can, let's go back to 2011, when you take over the agency, and let's dig a little deeper into that of the process. Did you bring up to buy the agency? Was it offered to you? Was it something that you presented and said, "Here's the changes I wanted to make"? I mean, how did that conversation look?
Our agency owner and the founder, as I learned, he had terminal cancer, and so I started. And when I found that out, and a lot of us there in the agency were, thinking, what's going to happen to us if and when this happens. And I thought I was a suitable candidate for it, and so I started approaching him, which is a difficult thing to do because you're talking to someone about their own mortality.
Yeah, of course.
And as I learned, there was no plan in place, and so who knows what would happen. And it was almost like I was doing him a favor because I was solving a problem that he had. Little did I know that, So, and at the time, I didn't have some big grand plan of what I wanted to do with the agency. I just wanted to keep my job.
Yeah.
I was extremely happy working in the independent world, and I just wanted to stay at the same desk, and I wanted everybody else to keep their jobs. And so that's where it started. And so we said, well, why don't we put together a purchase agreement of some sort? And we started to develop that, and he had me basically negotiate with his daughter, who was a corporate attorney, a high-ranking corporate attorney at the time, and really sharp. They're both really, really sharp people. And neither of us knew how to value an agency, or did we know where to go? We couldn't go to the bank. We couldn't seem to find anywhere of where to value an agency. And it's, as we've learned, it's not that easy. Now there's, we know of all kinds of resources. But at the time we didn't. And so you reach out to some of your independent agent contacts and try to get an idea. And I had an idea in mind of what I thought it might be worth. And we met in the middle. It was a very difficult process. The whole process almost fell apart the day before the closing. She had threatened to take the whole deal off the table, and it was difficult, especially when you're selling a business to your family member. So it was a very hard process. Ultimately, we got it done, and yeah, I don't know how else we would have done it. And at that time, of course, that was 2011, which doesn't sound like that long ago, but to actually put a real value on it, and then we had to figure out how we're going to finance it. We did basically seller financing, so I paid off. And I'm sorry, let me back up. During that time while we were talking about the sale of it, the previous owner, Ken, had passed away, which made it even more difficult to put some of the final pieces in place. So it's something we really had to work through, and I imagine that sort of scenario happens quite a bit. I would imagine now.
So actually, here locally, and it's interesting you said that, and I mean that's obviously a horrible situation to have to go through. But here locally, in the last 6 months, it's happened at 2 different agencies, and I think it's you see it more and more of just people don't have a plan, and they don't have it developed, and I think it's an interesting opportunity for other agencies as well, just to have the conversation. But I think you see it more and more and more that they just don't have a plan. Nothing. Whereas, like, someone asked me now, like, what's the plan with T5? It's like, I'm going to grow it as big as I can, and where we are sustainable and where we're profitable and we're having fun and we're doing good, and I'm still trying to think of that end goal in my first 8 months, right? So I think that's just been a shift of the thought of the agency owners, and obviously it's a legacy thing and a family thing that can make it difficult as well. But yeah, it's happened actually just in my little city here twice in the last 6 months.
Yeah, and it's something I look at. So I've had a perpetuation plan in place for a long time, until I was introduced to Carrie Wallace, where I put a valuation into my own business. And that's been a tremendous help. And using the resources that we have in the industry, my perpetuation plan is in a far better place. If something happens tomorrow, there's a plan in place,
which is huge.
And that should be for all. That should be for all of us.
Yeah.
And you don't want.
I need to work on that myself.
Yeah, well, we all do. I mean, again, you have so many things that you're working on as a young agency. That's probably the furthest thing but you do have to plan for it. It's just like when you become a parent, you need to plan for that child, and then you need to plan, well, what's going to happen if I'm not here. So it's just like putting a will together. Hard to do, but we have to do hard things.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting. We're going a little off topic here, but I think it's very interesting because it's almost like nobody wants to have the conversation, but it's going to happen at some point, right? We all have the end date, and the business is going to be sold at some point. So your point, like, start now of like here's what I would want to have now, and update that consistently. I want to try to pivot this conversation and staying in 2011. Shawn and I actually. A listener of the show that we speak with on a regular basis was in an interesting situation of where he was trying to change things in the agency and different things were happening. Talk to us about that, the day one that Brad Boldt is now the president of Ameriguard. And were there things that, hey, I always wanted to change it this way, or I want Sally to be doing things this way, and how did you approach that as now going from we're coworkers to now I'm writing your paycheck? What were some lessons you approached that? Because I think for scratch agency owners or just general owners that are listening, whatever that may be, we can always refine how we are doing that and building that rapport with our team. So from going from a coworker to the boss, what were some things you learned? What were some things you think you did well, not so well? Provide some insight on that if you could.
Yeah, well, I had some very clear things that needed to be cleaned up. And one of them was a producer in our agency that did a poor job, and that was something that needed to be addressed. In fact, that was the very first thing that I did. That day, the day we closed was a Friday, and I met with this agent on Saturday morning just to say, this is what the expectations are. We can't handle the the sloppiness and the being unorganized. Part of it was, I mean, for me, it was baptism by fire. I was dealing with issues before I was even owner. I had dealt with 2 E&O claims, and this was from one of these agents, and so I got to see what that was like and the scrutiny that you were under then as the owner, even though before I was the owner, that when when you're the owner, your name's on the door. So no matter how many agents you have or how many people you have working under you, you're responsible. You're responsible for what goes on in that office, period. And even though this is an outside agent, I had to clean up the mess, and I wasn't even owner yet. So I had to deal with that and say, set the expectation with how things were going to be going forward, or we were just going to have to sever the relationship. As it turned out, I ended up firing him 6 months later. The other thing that's difficult about that piece of it, when you come into an existing culture and an existing, management style, and my management style was going to be much different. There was no management style before. The next conversation that I had to have with one of our key employees is that, they could no longer show up 20 to 30 minutes late every day.
Yeah.
I did the math and said, this is what I would be paying for an empty chair. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically it was you sort of come in like there's a new sheriff in town, because that's what it had to be. Hindsight, the best thing would have been was I should have just let go of just about everyone and started with my own people, because that's probably the only way that it was going to work. I would say it's unlikely that you're going to have an existing group that's used to being managed and used to having no rules into this is the way that we're going to operate. Not that I was coming in guns blazing and saying this is the way we're going to do it or else. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it is hard for people to adapt into another style.
I gotta jump in on this because you're speaking my language, and I've told this. a little bit on this podcast, but my past life, if I call it, my family agency that I came from. When I joined the agency in 2016, the newest employee before me was there for 22 years.
Wow.
Let me say that again. When I joined the agency in 2016, the newest employee had been there for 22 years. So, son of the boss comes in and, hey, let's try this. And, same as you. Not coming in guns blazing, we're changing this, we're doing that, we're doing this. But a fresh kid out of college, I don't know what I don't know at the same time. But what if we try communicating this way with the client? What if we try, offering this? Mm-hmm. And not at all that it was ever, rejected or put down or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, for lack of a better term, right? Do you have anybody still at the agency that was original staff?
Not the original. Yes, I have my bookkeeper.
Okay. How many people were there when you took over?
There was only 3. There was for staff. There was 4.
4. Okay.
There was 4.
Yeah. So you went right into that leadership role.
Yeah.
Well, here's how I think this conversation could tie right into providing some value for the listeners is, if I'm listening to this right now and I'm about to hire my first person, this is like perfect stuff. Because for that bookkeeper, what would you say that you did so well that she's still with you today? And I think that's the interesting part to dive deep into, because to your point, you don't want to come in guns blazing and say, okay, Brad was now sitting next to you in the desk. Well, now I'm in the back of my own office and now I'm the owner. And this, because that's what's going to turn people off. But if you have that good employee that seems like the bookkeeper that's still been with you, what are some things that you did in your leadership practice that would lead them to still be with you today? What do you think those would be?
I think it was just open communication, and if anything, her role, didn't change. Her role probably changed the least out of anyone's, because she kind of ran her own department, and no, it was just there was just I think it was just open communication and learning and allowing her to do her job and not micromanaging what she was going to do.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But Brad, what are you doing? What are you doing now? Are you more of because we talked about this on the last podcast a little bit? Are you more just in a leadership role right now, or are you producing yourself still? What does that look like?
I'm still doing a little bit of both.
Okay.
I am primarily in a leadership role.
Okay.
And then I pretty much got myself out of the production role altogether. And I think, the goal for most of us is going to be to kind of work ourselves out of a job. And I did a good job of that, I think. And then I found that I had actually some time on my hands, and I enjoy producing.
Yeah.
So I do a little bit of commercial producing, and I do a little bit of high value client producing.
Very nice. And how many producers do you have now?
I have 8.
You have 8. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How are you finding these producers?
Well, now I'm not actively looking.
Okay.
It's just most of they've been with us for, quite a few years.
Yeah.
So, and I'm honestly not looking to add any more producers, at this time, because from talking to people, all of our agencies are run a little bit differently.
Yeah.
The agency that I took over, how it was set up was that basically these are, independent contractors. So I'm almost like my own small little network. So the eight producers are essentially their independent contractor, independent agents that just have an exclusive agreement with Ameriguard.
So has it always been that way, or was that a trial and tribulation that you kind of came to that destination?
It's always been that way, and I did make a couple attempts to adjust the model. I do have one employee that's strictly a producer. He handles all my personal line stuff, and I did try to adjust the model to having employee producers, and that they strictly produce. And the agency does this customer support. And on the 3 times that I tried that model, the agent it just didn't turn out to be a good fit. Okay. So it never took off.
So the independent contractors that you have, do they have like their own agent, like brand and agency, so to speak, and they're just sub producers for you, or they're just on as individuals?
Yeah, most 6 of them work under the Ameriguard brand.
Okay,
and then there are 2 that like to use their own name.
Gotcha.
And they're considered sub-producers. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's stay in 2011 here, because I think you didn't start from scratch, but
no,
you had the opportunity to purchase an existing book of business and make some real changes that we've talked about, right? That you believed were the best changes for the company. And if you had to look back in 2011, is there anything that sticks out to you that you would do differently immediately? Is there the one thing that in your first year of owning your business or whatever it is that you would do differently that you can give to these scratch agents to maybe not make the same mistake?
Well, I would have definitely. I think number one is I would have started acting like a business owner. And when I took over the agency, even for a long time, I was still acting as an insurance agent. I was acting as an insurance agent that owned an agency, and it took me a long time to act as a business owner and to take a step back and to look at how the company is run as a whole, and that stunted my growth, really, and that was one of my biggest mistakes. Another one was it took me a long time to let go of things, and I was trying to take on. We all try to, in the beginning you wear too many hats because you have to. And then you have to figure out which hat you can take off and maybe what your weakest point is. I had a hard time letting go even for some of my servicing staff. I was still too involved when I should have been delegating and allowing them to handle it, and really failing to realize that if they weren't the right person, then I needed to find somebody that was the right person to fill that role. So that was, but without question, it was acting as a business owner and viewing my agency as a business rather than working in it as an insurance agent.
I totally get that. Yeah, I mean, I just brought on a producer, awesome guy. But yeah, I'm getting better at it. But in the beginning, like, you know, I get a lead in for myself, and I just want to work the lead. Like you said, you just want to be the insurance agent, right? But then I'm like, oh crap, I should send this to Ryan in my office. He can handle it, and if he has any hiccups, it'll be a great, you know, training opportunity. So yeah, I am trying to push and delegate. Even my VA, I have a VA, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
she is absolutely awesome, and you know, I could definitely push her more stuff, you know, and I've gotten better at pushing her more stuff, but it's just something like, unless you're conscious and thinking of it, like I didn't even realize. And then like a few weeks ago, I'm like, oh, but like, why am I not sending this to Anna? And then why am I not sending that to Anna? Why am I not sending this to Anna? And then before you know it, you have like 10 different things you should have been delegating. So no, I think that is a good thing to definitely be conscious of. And maybe even if you have to write it down when something comes up that you can delegate, and just kind of have a list. Like that's what I had to do for myself, is make a list of what I could delegate. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah. You know, and circling back to Stephen's question, the other piece of it, which comes up time and time again when I'm talking to other agency owners, is setting a process, right?
Yeah,
I know we've heard it so many times. When I took over in 2011, zero process. Zero written process, or zero, this is how we're going to handle it.
Yeah.
I had in my mind how I wanted things to go, and I did a very poor job of explaining how things should go or setting the precedent. It was just, you know, Lucy handles it this way, and it seems to be getting done, so it's fine. And you know, Rhonda's doing it this way, and it seems to be going fine, so I'm just going to leave it alone. And I waited way too long to establish the way that Ameriguard should do it, and to have a written process.
It always comes back to processes and procedures.
100%. Yeah.
And so how does that look now in Ameriguard, and what was really the turning point for that?
The turning point, and I know you guys have made reference to it, and I've talked about it on a podcast before. For me, the turning point was being exposed to the IAOA group. And that's just a group of our peers, right? So it's, you know, that's a group that was, you know, established, you know, for us to collaborate together. And I think that changed my whole direction of where I was going, by just listening to our peers and taking a little bit from here and a little bit from here. And you know, you can run a whole agency, you know, based on that Facebook group. Yeah. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So that was honestly the single turning point, being exposed to this group of other, you know, our other professionals.
Yeah, I've told Stephen that too a bunch of times on this podcast, that when I opened up my own agency, that's one of the goals I made for myself, is to connect with more people within the industry. And that's helped my business arguably more than anything.
And this podcast is going to, I mean, this podcast is going to force you to, you know, connect with these other professionals, and you're going to learn, and you're going to be inspired. And you know, it's like forcing you to network with someone else, you know, in the industry, and you're going to learn from it.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about that a lot, but my biggest struggle as being a scratch agency right now is not having the team, and not having Lucy to high five on a big account or whatever. And I've said it here. I've said it here all the time. Like Shawn's become exactly that for me. Him and I probably call each other 8 times a day. And there's other people that I can reach out to about, hey, I'm battling with this. Have you ever heard anything about this? Like that is priceless. And I've had no experience in any other industry, but it's just still amazing to me. From the second I started at IAOA and May at the event. No, it wasn't May. When was that? October. I started the business in May. Yeah, in October. It was like everybody. Hey, when you and it was, hey, how long have you been an owner? Oh, 4 months. And it was immediately. And I've said this. I know I've said it before on the show, but it was immediately. What can I do to help you? Here's my card. Reach out. Just like that's how Brad and I met. So it's amazing. Let's dive into one thing I want to talk about. Yeah. Is here we are. You're in Alabama for a month. As an agency owner. That's awesome. You have the ability to do that, right? Yes. Talk to us how that works so well. Are you working every day from Alabama? Do you just have the team set up so well that everything is just clicking along? I mean, you talk about removing yourself from an insurance agent to an owner. Seems like if we're spending a month in Alabama, you're doing a pretty good job at that, which is fantastic. So talk to people who maybe like Stephen Turnbull here, who's like, man, I can't wait to do that someday. About how you how that works for you is running the business remotely and not being there with the team or virtually or whatever that is.
Yeah, a huge part is the team and having trust in your team and building a good team. I referenced in the beginning. I had a team that it wasn't my team, is what it was. I've been able to build a team. Have a great group that I trust, and with our technology, we are connected. We communicate through Slack. The team handles 98% of the work that comes in, and I'm here to support them, answer the questions, put out the major fires when they come through. So that is the luxury of building building a good group, is that you can get away. You don't have to look over their shoulder. They are going to get the job done, and they have. So it's definitely reassuring. I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for them. I wouldn't. And we talk about scaling. You're not going to scale without building a team.
Totally.
So what Shawn has talked a little bit about, he is going through it right now, and part of it is he's learning to go through it. Right?
There's only one way through.
No. Yeah. And Stephen, your time will come. For that, I heard you guys on your most recent podcast, and you referenced that you're a little bit impatient. Just something I would add, and to anybody else that's listening, you got to do it when you're ready. We're all on our own journey here. Yeah. Just because you see Shawn doing it, or you see somebody like Billy Wagner that does this, and all these other guys that have this, and some guys that grow real fast and they're doing this premium. Hey, that's their journey. Your day will come, and you have to, whatever's going to make sense for you. What Stephen might have to take home to support his family might be different than what Shawn has to take home. It's different. So
totally, we've
heard it time and time again. Don't compare yourself to someone else. You stay on your path, and your time will go. It's a marathon. Yep. It's a marathon. You run your race. Yeah. So
let's scream that for the people in the back, Brad, because I needed to hear it about maybe 6 months ago. Do not compare yourself to others, because it's very easy to get on the Facebook groups and see, hey, when did you hire your first employee? When I was at 500 in premium. Well, I waited until I was in 3 million in premium. And I can't even remember the numbers, not that they matter, but Shawn and I recently shared that with each other of the premium volume in our agencies versus the amount of policies. And it was a staggering difference, I think, to the fact of I had such a lower amount of premium for more policies than Shawn did per policy or something along those lines. But and he's in a completely different market. We're in the same state, 6 hours away, but he's in a completely different market.
Yeah.
You know, the average homeowners is a lot more down there than it is up here. Vice versa, comparing yourself to someone like me and Taylor Garcia out in California. Those homeowner prices are way different than Central New York, right?
Yeah.
So be careful about that rat race of, oh, well, you should hire your first VA or your first service person at $1 million in premium. I echo that.
Yeah, and not even that. Also, too, you never know if that person took out a loan, if they have a significant other that's the breadwinner.
Correct.
It could be a million different things.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't even go down
100%.
that wormhole. Yep.
Yeah.
So, Brad, I'm going to hit you with our last question here, and I want you to imagine something with me. We're down in Alabama. We just got off the golf course, and you wake up the next morning, and your challenge was starting a scratch agency. What is one thing that you would do differently in your business? And it's not return to the golf course and just play another round.
One thing that I would do differently. Boy, that's a tough one. So if I want to call myself a success, I was, and I'm a worker. So when I started, I just hit the pavement. It was a pure numbers game, and I was going to do whatever it took to succeed. So at that time, whether it was cold calling or working internet leads, I would make phone calls every single night and Saturday morning, to succeed. Now it would be find ways to work smarter and not harder. And I think a good piece of that is something I would do differently is to establish better relationships. I would establish better relationships with referral partners such as loan officers, with financial professionals, and other centers of influence in the community. And when I say that, something I've learned later is I got involved with the Chamber of Commerce. And all these are long plays. Even the loan officers right now, the housing market is not the hottest, that it's been, but it's going to come around. But if you establish these relationships, when it does, you're going to have a referral network. And financial professionals, which I, just got involved with in recent years. That if you're if you're a personal lines producer, that should be your target market. These are people that are coming to you that need their assets protected. And so you're finding that solution. You're not coming to them to say, hey, I can get you car insurance for, 20% less. You're coming to them with value. And so that it was a huge market. So to answer your question, it would be to establish relationships, which, Stephen, you should be grinning over there because that's something you are constantly beating the drum of what you're doing to grow a business. And in the long run, that is going to work out very well.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. I can't agree more. It's all about relationships and doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's interesting. We talk about this a lot, about how many different ways there are to skin the cat. And Shawn and I's friendship over the last couple of months have challenged each other to think differently about how we get business and how we operate our businesses. So, just do the right thing, make the relationship, show your value, to your point, and you're off to the races. But Brad, man, we really appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us. Really enjoyed this discussion. Why don't you tell everybody listening how they can get in touch with you? Also, pitch the podcast. You've got a killer podcast out there. Tell them how they can listen to that, because you do an amazing job bringing on some great people. I enjoy listening to that every week as well. So talk about how they can get in touch with you.
In touch with me, LinkedIn is a great way. I'm on there quite a bit, and you can message me on LinkedIn. And you can email me, which is Boldt, BBOLDT at Ameriguard, AMERI-guard, GUARD.com. Those are the two best ways. And thanks for pitching the podcast. I started my own podcast. It's been about 7 months now, and the premise of the podcast is geared towards scratch agents. And the reason behind that is, I feel like I made every mistake in the book, being an agency owner, and so I've learned a thing or two, and I'm hoping to develop a little better roadmap, for those that are going through that process. So I try to gear most of my podcasts around those type of questions. What your challenges are, what mistakes agents have made, what they would do differently, advice they have. So it's a lot of fun connecting with our other agents out there.
It sounds very similar to another podcast I know.
It is. It's different. I mean, you guys, and like I said, I'm so happy you guys are doing this. I think you're doing a great job. I think you're putting just fantastic content. So
thanks, bro.
I enjoy listening to it every week.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And I'll just say this because I've said it before. Everything that you're seeing on social media has nothing to do with me. Shawn Fitzgerald is pumping all of that out, so he deserves all the credit because it's impressive with all the editing and all the work he does. So, Shawn, I appreciate all the work you're doing on that front. Brad, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you. Hopefully we'll see you in Chicago at the IAOA, right?
I'll be there.
Awesome.
Be there.
I'm gonna go east, stop in JFK, pick up Shawn, and then we're gonna head over. So I'm driving Shawn there this year. It's gonna be a good time. Everybody, that is another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening or watching that episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it. We hope to see you next time. If you have any questions, you could reach out to myself or Steven on Instagram or LinkedIn, and we'll see you next week.